A very good Wednesday to everybody, and thanks for clicking on to today's European Outlook. There is so much to unpack. There is rumours of cold behind what is a very mild, very wet pattern across much of Western Europe, it has to be said at the minute. But there is a lot of interesting elements to consider. Warm starts to November's, followed by colder spells, perhaps late November, but even more so into December. And I'm going to build a case that provides reason behind why we may be hinting towards a cold start to winter this season. So be sure to buckle up, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get right into it then. Exciting times to come if you're a lover of winter weather. At the very least, this is an interesting situation that is beginning to show its hand. Honister Pass in Cumbria, over a 42-hour period, recorded 312 millimeters of rain, so a significant amount of rain as that southwesterly moist air gets driven into the upslopes of Western Cumbria. We've been seeing the orographic influence kick in and deliver some significant amounts of rain. But this is the latest radar imagery here. This is going to be a reasonably long video today, so be sure to be, just hang in there because there is a lot of interesting things. There is elements, but it has to be said, I'm going to be looking at all elements with regards to how this pattern may evolve further down the road. But there's some interesting things going on. But you can see here an area of low pressure. That has been generating some very strong convection into parts of Portugal, western areas of Spain. We've got some very warm air getting drawn northwards out of the south. We've got some relatively cold air aloft. That's been generating some very explosive thunderstorms indeed around the Lisbon area and adjacent areas in recent days. Let's just very quickly look at that. I did a retweet of a couple of aspects just earlier there. So you can see here, this is from Thomas Pukic of the strong convection and high levels of CAPE. Portugal is kicking ass today with 2 rounds of storms, the most recent band with high chance of severe wind gusts given very strong mean wind in the lower troposphere. So we've got strong shear, we've got strong winds coming in from the west, while we've got surface winds coming in from a more southerly direction. And this was a capture here of some, this is from Weather Watcher, of incredible lightning activity slammed into the Portugal area, Lisbon to be exact, around 4:30 a.m. this morning, I'm assuming this is. So check this out, quite a lot of heavy rain, gusty winds, as well as lightning. So that was the scenes down in Portugal. We've been seeing temperatures knocking the door of mid-30s down in the Canaries as well. This wasn't necessarily planned, but bear with a second. I'm just wanting to show you possible record temperatures up the western side of Europe. Look at the amount of clustering of warmth across the continent of Europe in particular. So these are all kind of like daily record highs, extending from the Canaries, Northwest Africa, much of France, and look at the UK here with regards to record warm temperatures. Rather interesting stuff. There's a reason why I'm showing all this in a little second here, because this is going to be building the narrative, so to speak, with regards to further down the road here. So let's just have a couple of examples here. Record time daily high at Belfast Aldergrove Airport, Glasgow, for example. This is Prestwick, 16 Celsius. Let's have a quick look at the current temperatures in across the UK here. So rather dismal up here, it has to be said, across the north of the UK, underneath some fairly heavy and persistent rain band that's been moving northwards through the course of today. We're now stuck under that band of heavy precip. We are seeing a little bit less in the way of heavier rainfall across more southern areas, but even with cloud cover, we are seeing temperatures respond very nicely indeed. So you're talking about the temperatures as high as 16 Celsius as far north as Prestwick. And you can see here 14, 15 widely, 16 across the island of Ireland. We've got the widespread 15, 16, even quite a few 17s showing up here across the greater London area and across a broader area of southern England as well as Wales. In terms of overnight minimums, so this is where we started off today, and albeit it cooled off quite a lot under clearer skies, lighter winds, and somewhat fresher air, it has to be said, up here across the north. But where you've had that moist band of air coming northwards, we've been seeing temperatures holding up quite considerably. Quite a few 13s and 14s showing up here across the south of the UK. We could be talking about a few record warm nights down across the south of the UK, and it isn't just across. This is Guy Fawkes, of course, today. Very, very wet night to come for Guy Fawkes across the north. Not so much, a few spotty showers here and there across England, Wales and Ireland, but it looks as if the wettest conditions is going to be further south. But you can see here a very mild night indeed across the south of the UK. That has followed on to a warm day, and we could be talking about some reasonably warm overnight temperatures tonight. Another warm day tomorrow as well. We're going to see temperatures respond back into the kind of 16, possible 17, 18 Celsius range across the northern half of the UK during the course of the next couple of days, so stay tuned for that. But it has been wet, it has to be said. This is 24-hour rainfall totals, not so much across the north, but into the Cumbria area, into parts of Wales as well. West and north England and into Wales, southwestern England has seen quite a lot of wet weather as well. This is the 72-hour rainfall total, and like I say, Thunderstorms Pass, 312 millimeters of rain falling within a 42 hour, I'll get there in the end, 42 hour period at Thunderstorms Pass. Now, what is quite interesting about all this is when I look back at this is from Daniel at London Southeast Weather, the Snow Dreamer on Twitter, showing London's warmest November days. This is the period between 1949 and 2024, and London's warmest day was 18.5 on the 4th of November 2010. 18.4 on the 6th of November 2003, 18.3 on the 1st of November 1984. Now, there is a mix of different outcomes to what I'm going to get to in just a second here, but we're talking about temperatures that are close, knocking the door of this range here, anywhere from 17.4 all the way up to 18.5. My point being is, some of those cold end to Novembers and cold Decembers have followed on from a very mild start to November. So mild starts in November, or mild periods during November, have become relatively commonplace. Now, if we look at this tweet here, if I'm right in saying this is again, it was exceptionally mild night with a low temperature of 13.8 at London Heathrow, setting a new daily record. Previous was 13.4 in 2010. Now, we know what followed at the end of November 2010 and that December that followed on. Next few nights will be continuing with that average, that the average November high early in the month is 13.2, so even above that. Highest recorded November minimum is 14.9 set on the 2nd of November 2020. So, another interesting tweet here by Shrine Bruin. Another November that started very mild was in 2005, most notably so far the minimum temperatures. Eastbourne didn't get below 15.9 on the 3rd of November, and Herne Bay had a minimum of 15.8. Kew Gardens had a maximum of 19.4 on the 2nd of November, yet there was snow later, even in Cornwall, where there was blizzards, and this was the scene following on from that very warm start to November with St Austell recording some very significant amounts of snow here. This was on the 25th of November 2005, by the way. Just see here if there's another element. So the famous November 2010 started exceptionally mild and reached 19 Celsius in London. The running CET after the first 5 days of November 2010 was 12.2. The November 91 to 2020 average is only 7.3. Give or take, this would be relatively higher early on, as November is a cooling month. Still a massive anomaly. So there is interesting elements about the fact that we've got a record strong negative Indian Ocean dipole. We've got a strong easterly QBO. Both these have frictional effects on the stratospheric polar vortex. The ECMWF remains with this rapid deceleration of the mean zonal winds within the surrounding the polar vortex within the stratosphere towards the end of this month. It actually goes above average for a period of time seen by the ECM, and then it rapidly decelerates here towards the running mean of the ECM run has it going record weak. Now, I was chinned by a smart arse on Twitter yesterday saying about do I know the definition of a sudden stratospheric warming? Of course I do. Obviously, there is some members, outliers, it has to be said, suggesting that we actually see a reversal of the mean zonal wind. So the winds flip and switch from westerly to easterly, and that obviously constitutes a major sudden stratospheric warming. I'm not saying that there is a major sudden stratospheric warming going on towards the end of this month by any stretch, but there is something clearly going on here. Another interesting element to consider is the fact that the Mann-Julian oscillation is trying to go into phases 7. That is a high latitude blocking and colder mid latitude phase for the northern hemisphere. So it's interesting, this very mild start in November, very wet start in November. Remember, both 2009 record wet weather in parts of Cumbria. We've had in the last 72 hours a period of over 300 millimeters of rainfall in Cumbria. We've got the record breaking warm temperatures lifting up from the south here. So quite often, either cold ends November or at least cold Decembers often are preceded by unusually warm and wet conditions. And I thought that is rather interesting. These are the 850 temperature anomalies, by the way, for today, Wednesday, the 5th of November. Super warm air getting drawn northwards as we see this dip in the jet over the North Atlantic. That's pulling unusual warmth. Like I say, mid-30s in the Canaries, are close to it anyway. Warm temperatures in the Iberia, France, UK, Ireland, and in the central areas of Europe, including Scandinavia as well. These are the current temperatures for the continent, and there certainly is not an awful lot of cold air in the mix at the moment here. So moving on then, I wanted to show you another interesting element here. This is off roostweather.com. This is Dan Harris's personal website here. This is record warm temperatures for the month of November, or in fact the 5th of November. And you can see here quite a few interesting years showing up here. 2003, so a record for 10 on this day in 2003, 16.9 Celsius. Bear in mind the year 2003. Let's have another look at a couple of interesting things. Altnahara 16.5, 2003. Kinloss 17.7, 2003. Let's move further south. Again, Grangemouth Refinery 16.2 on the 5th of November 2003. Moving further down, 1938 showing up there. Let me just see here if there's a couple of interesting. 1938 really did have some remarkable warm temperatures. A lot of these records further south, it looks to be 1938, 1978. What followed 1978 was the winter of discontent, 78, 79, record-breaking cold temperatures followed on from these remarkably warm temperatures that started off the month of November. So 2003, what followed in 2003 indicate a cold period with increase in cloud from the south, although parts of the north remain sunny. So December of 2003 was a cold month, especially in the north, not so much in the south. Let's go to let me just see here. Bear with me a minute. I want to show you something here. Let's look at the full month in terms of records. Told you this was a long video, didn't I? Let's just get this uploaded. I wanted to show you this here. So, a few interesting years showing up. So these are all-time November records. Not that I'm saying that that's what's going to happen here, but a couple of interesting years popping up, especially down towards the south, if I'm remembering when I've done my kind of research of this video today. 2014 showing up here. We've got a 1994. Let's look at 1994. There was a few significant records achieved in 1994. What followed that December? So this is December's following on from record warm beginnings to the month, so 1994. And we've seen, this is just good old Google AI overview. December 1994, the UK experienced a wet and mild first half to the month, with low pressure bringing rain and strong winds, according to blah, 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 blah. So interesting here, there is elements, obviously, that go against slightly the idea of a cold December. But this is just purely based, picking out, the following December followed on from a warm start. So there's 2003 showing up here. December 2003 was a notably cold month. There was other months showing up. 2014. Let's have a quick look at 2014. You can see here. Obviously, that was characterized by a succession of winter storms resulting in very high winds, heavy rainfall, and caused disruption across the UK, especially the southern and western portions of Scotland. That's another element that has to be factored in, is the potential for a stretched polar vortex that then favours North America, but also favours North America for cold and snow, but it actually could potentially favour a stronger Atlantic jet and storms moving into the west of Europe here. So that is another element that has to be taken into consideration. Another interesting one here, this is from Eric Webb, based in the United States. Very interesting one, this. So this is the correlation between high solar activity and an easterly QBO. So this is Northern Hemisphere Monthly NOAA 20th Century Reanalysis, surface low pressure anomalies by QBO phase, solar, and a cool, neutral, and La Nina winter. This is between 1900 and 2014. And you can see here that it might be hard to see this, I apologise, but it's showing a lot of high latitude blocking and Greenland blocking here. So this would favour, so this winter seems to be intent on following the cool Enzo East QBO solar max paradigm of early winter with a negative AO, NAO, I-replicated Gray et al. 2004's analysis, except used the surface pressure from the 20 CR and isolated negative Enzo left, which is close to the latest Euro weekly forecast. So the other key takeaway here about these kinds of winters is that we see more frequent early negative Arctic oscillations, North Atlantic oscillations, and stratospheric warming events, as the latest Euro weeklies below suggest, followed by much stronger polar vortex in the mid to late winter, so January and February here. So are you getting what I'm trying to get at here? This is certainly a very interesting situation that is showing up with this high solar East QBO, cool Enzo phase suggesting, and the fact that we've got this rapid deceleration of the mean zone of winds. I'm not saying, folks, that this is going to be a major sudden stratospheric warming, but certainly there is a lot of different elements here that is becoming more interesting at the very least. Upcoming 7 days, we've got warmer than average conditions right across most of Europe. Interesting cool areas, southern Africa, across parts of the Arabian Peninsula into Iran, all the stands of West Asia, into look at how cool India, Pakistan, Afghanistan is over the next 7 days. A little bit cooler across Southeast Asia. Much of Australia is actually below average. Most of South America below average. Most of North America is arguably warmer than average. And then if you look at Europe over the next 7 days, it's looking very mild indeed. But yeah, certainly very interesting. I think anyway, and I hope you have found that interesting. Incidentally, let's have a quick look at the GFS model here. And remember, like I said, the MJO is trying to go into the colder phases of 6 and particularly into 7 here. That is another element to add in. And if we go back to, so that's the MJO, and this is the different members showing phase 6, phase 7 into the western portion of the Pacific Ocean. That would enhance the high latitude blocking potential down the road. Now, you can see here, this is the milder conditions getting drawn north to the east of this low that has been generating all the showers and thunderstorms over Portugal and western Spain. We're not in any colder at all, but if we go into the overview chart here, you can see how this pattern evolves according to the GFS at least. Got more unsettled weather drifting into Iberia, drifting into the UK and Ireland here. We'll get a little bit of a break here as we move into the beginning of the weekend, and then we'll have more unsettled weather moving in during the course of Sunday into Monday. Then we've got another area of low pressure. All the while, by the way, watch what's happening further north, up over the far North Atlantic, Greenland, Iceland here. What that's doing is this building of pressure, particularly so over Iceland and Greenland, is then going to start to force this low, this large envelope of low pressure that's bringing quite a lot of disturbed weather at the Azores, Iberia. Got a sharp boundary here seen by the GFS moving into Iberia. But notice here that we're starting to turn our winds more northerly. And as we continue to play through, we've got a system here that is moving up from the south. That system trying to push north. We've got cold northerly winds now coming down from the north. And if we put on the 850 temperatures, you can see here the colder air trying to sink. Look at this here. That's rather interesting, isn't it? This is just, the end of next week. So I'm not talking about the end of November here, but certainly this is a rather interesting situation evolving, and then we might start to see something milder coming back into play. But this idea, by the way, of the warm start in November, warm, wet, the evolution of the MJO, the correlation with the high solar, East QBO, negative Indian Ocean dipole, etc. We're talking longer term here. We're talking more likely to be, if not the end of November, into the month of December. And I think there is quite a lot of support for the potential of something colder. My concern would be that stretched polar vortex extending from East Asia into North America actually favours North America more than it does Europe. That is an element that has to be taken into consideration. Let's have a look at the European model here then. Go back to the overview chart real quick. Play through here. You can see here this wet weather sweeping in. Areas of low pressure. There's that building of pressure. There's the northerly winds. There's clash zone showing up here. Interesting snow potential here with this situation. Area of 979 millibar low versus a 1034 high over Iceland. That is a rather interesting look. At the very least, folks, even if this doesn't all pan out, it's interesting to follow. We've got something to bite onto here, grab a hold of, and become interested in as we head towards the winter season. Put on the 850 temperatures, and you can see here the battle here that is seen over the UK according to the ECM all the way to Saturday the 15th of the month here. Play it back through. See here, there's the milder air moving north ahead of that low. Still some relatively mild air, turning a little bit cooler. And you can see here as we play through that colder air fighting against the warmer air. Eventually that colder air looks to win out according to the ECMWF. Look at that there by the time we reach the 20th of November. So I'm trying to think, have I showed you everything? Incidentally, there was a location in Russia that hit minus 45 Celsius, the coldest out with Greenland this year so far. Big contrast over Asia between the tropics and the polar regions of Siberia. There's that minus 45 right there at Shelongansti. So, yep, it is getting colder. It is getting more and more interesting. And I hope you can stick around here on this channel. We're going to be looking more and more at this. There's the ECMWF, by the way, ensemble. That is something I was going to show. This is the NAO, expected to go from positive to firmly negative and remain firmly negative here. The Arctic Oscillation 2 is expected to go from positive to negative here as we build the heights over the Arctic region. That then is likely the reason why we're going to see the strong deceleration of stratospheric winds surrounding the polar vortex. Let's have a very quick finish off by looking at the northern hemisphere view in terms of the 500s, because we've not actually looked at that just yet. So this is the upcoming 5 days. We've got this trough. Got a very cold air mass, by the way, early next week, dropping into the eastern United States. We're also seeing a lot of deep lows moving into the through the Aleutians into the Gulf of Alaska, northwestern North America, and that is now setting the wheels in motion. That eastward progress into the west portion of the Pacific is then influencing a stronger storm train into into Alaska and into the North Pacific. That is the resurgence of the Rossby wave train beginning to set the wheels in motion to then change the overall pattern across the northern hemisphere. So if we play through this, let's see the evolution of this pattern here going forward, and looking at the deepening of this trough over the Gulf of Alaska and the Northeast Pacific. Look at the deep negative here over eastern portions of North America. So as we dig that, we've got this negative here over the West Pacific. We've got a ridge in between. We've got this deep negative here extend from Alaska down the western side of North America. That in turn pumps the high over the western portion of North America and drives a cold trough Arctic air for the first time. It could be record-breaking cold, by the way, for this time of the year into the eastern side of North America. There's the heights coming up over Greenland, lifting now over Europe as well here, in conjunction with this wave break of evolution over the North Pacific, affecting North America, and then in turn affects our side of the hemisphere. So continue to play through. This is the period between only the 6th through the 13th. Continue to play through. You can see the heights coming up. There's that negative NAO signal, that negative AO signal showing up here as well. And then this is as we move into the month of December. Look at the high. Look at the high. That's a negative NAO pattern. That would suggest more of a trough over Europe, a trough over eastern North America, ridge over Greenland and the Arctic region here. This is certainly a very interesting situation to follow. I hope you can stick around here in the channel, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time with more. Bye for now.